her 15-year-old daughter, who we refer to as SM, at her brother Siofua Sua's residence, and her daughter had notified her that he had, Mr. Sua, had a gun and that nobody was answering the door. UPD officers were dispatched to Mr. Sua's residence in Mill Creek, where they made contact with ES and SM's father, who we referred to as GM, outside the basement level residence. ES, the mother, reported that her brother had been drinking. She had dropped off her daughter off at his apartment. Her daughter had called and was saying that she was scared, and ES heard yelling in the background, and they got cut off. ES then called her brother and could hear her daughter in the background saying that he was trying to shoot her and was asking for help, and that she believed that she was still there. GM explained that the lights were all off except for the kitchen, and that they weren't in the kitchen. As officers gathered information, additional officers arrived on the scene, including Sergeant Scott Wilberger, Detective Shane Laycock, and Canine Officer Austin Schmidt. As officers contained the residence at about 10:31 p.m., SM's mom advised that SM texted her that Mr. Sua was asleep and texted the door code for the back, after which ES asked her if she could come outside but did not receive a response. Meanwhile, at about 10:34 p.m., UPD was advised that West Valley City Police had received a 911 call from SM's friend's sister, who reported that SM's friend had an open line with SM and that SM was with her uncle and was driving SM around at gunpoint. So let me just pause for a second there. So you have the call that goes to the Mill Creek residence as they're setting up containment, but they can't get inside, but the place seems like maybe it's deserted. A few minutes later, there's also a 911 call that is going out to West Valley Police Department, who are responding to it, but it's coming through a friend. And they're advising that there's an open line, and they believe that the victim in this matter is with her uncle, but is possibly in a car being driven. So I want to put that context for you in that sense. West Valley Police Department was then dispatched to SM's residence in West Valley. So West Valley then gets this call, so they're going to yet another location in West Valley because in response to that. And they also began listening to an open line because of the call that had come out, so they're actually hearing. But the West Valley is also trying to communicate this with UPD while they're at Mill Creek. So I know it sounds a little confusing, but that's really the two realities that were going on. At about 10:37 p.m., Sergeant Wilberger and Detective Laycock tried to use the door code on the back door, but were unsuccessful. As I mentioned, that was the door code that was provided by the mom. At approximately 10:45 p.m., Sergeant Wilberger and Detective Laycock went to the ground level window to the kitchen and removed an AC unit and opened it up. Now this is really important, and I'll maybe go into a little bit more. So you have the perception that maybe he is driving around in a car. They're trying to gather and trying to figure out what to do. And I want to pause here because this is an important fact that we determined through also the information that was gathered. And I want to commend Sergeant Wilberger because at that point he was concerned that there was potentially someone with a gun, but he may be driven off somewhere. But out of abundance of caution, he wanted to make sure that they had cleared this residence, even though they were not getting a response from that. They had tried the door, but they could not enter into the door, but they noticed an AC unit, and they decided that they were going to go ahead and pull that AC unit out just out of abundance of caution. Austin Schmidt, who is a canine officer, has heard about this, so he's sort of arrived there, and they're working through this plan, if you will, because for them, they're thinking that this might be an incident that's happening somewhere else. So again, I just want to sort of give you context for that. So as Sergeant Wilberger, Detective Laycock went to the ground level window to the kitchen and removed the AC unit and opened it up and made announcements calling out for SM, but heard no responses. It had been really quiet there. At 10:51 p.m., a ping on SM's phone indicated that her phone was within about 700 meters of that residence. So there was some conflicting information that was going on at that point. Sergeant Wilberg decided to enter the apartment to clear it and got Officer Schmidt and Detective Laycock and returned to the kitchen window where they opened it back up. So they opened it back up, and then at this point, Wilberg, out of abundance of caution, just wants to clear it. Schmidt is going to enter in, followed by Laycock into it. Officer Schmidt climbed first through the window, down into the kitchen, drew his gun, and began giving an announcement. So he gets in, he announces UPD, but again, nothing is heard. Detective Laycock went in after him, and then they opened the back door for Sergeant Wilberg. Once they made the entrance, they opened the door. Sergeant Wilberg was let in as well. But now they're inside. Inside, Officer Schmidt moved up on the threshold of the next room. Sergeant Wilberger and Detective Laycock began down the hallway. So he goes up, and those other officers are following. Officer Schmidt later described to investigators, and as I indicated, that it was really important. Officer Schmidt has a right not to share that information with us, and we commend him for giving us a detailed statement. And as he stated in that statement, and as I pie around the corner, so as what he means is he's pieing around the corner in looking at it, I'm looking directly north. It'd be the northwest side of the living room. I see a male holding a female between his legs, his left arm around her, and a gun against her head. And I have them illuminated, because it's dark, I have them illuminated with my tactical light on my pistol. And he's looking directly at me, and he says, "Leave, I'm going to shoot her." At that point, I was just like, F, that's not good. And I'm like, F, this guy is going to kill this girl. He's going to kill her. So I yell, we always yell, "Let me see your hands," right? He knows I'm there. He starts easing his head behind her and more to where I could only see half of his right eye. And he starts pushing that gun harder against her head. And it's against the side of her head, temple, somewhere around here. And he's pushing it harder against her. And he said something. There was a long sentence, but all I could hear on the second part was that I'm going to shoot her. And I was 100%. This guy is going to kill this girl. And I was terrified that I wasn't going to be able to save her. So at that point, he said it twice. I lined up and I took the shot right above his right temple. Notably, at 10:56, body-worn camera recordings from officers from West Valley. So as I indicated to you, there were two scenes. So although this incident now is happening in Mill Creek, we were able to recover body-worn cameras of the officers who were present in West Valley, whose body-worn camera captures the sound of the line that is coming through from the Mill Creek residence in the phone. And what we were able to hear captures an open line with SM, captures a male saying, quote, "Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, or I'm going to shoot her too," end quote. So that corroborates both the statement and also the audio that we have from a different scene. After the shot was fired, SM ran out the back of the residence and was escorted to her parents. Inside the residence, Officer Schmidt, Detective Laycock, continued to hold their weapons on Mr. Sua from the threshold to the living room as additional officers entered the residence. And because they held that position, when the other officers who entered it with body-worn cameras, and I'll be able to show you that we were able to actually identify the positioning of this incident, even though we did not have the positioning of the original shooting itself. The officers observed that the gun, a loaded Smith & Wesson MP 2.09 millimeter handgun, was on the couch between Mr. Sua's legs. His thumb was on it. He was still moving. He had an obvious gunshot wound to his right head. After a shield was brought in, officer approached Mr. Sua, pulled him off the couch onto the ground. Emergency medical responders subsequently declared Mr. Sua deceased at that time. The other thing that I want, and as I said, that simultaneously we also were able to get full detailed statements from Sergeant Wilberger and Detective Laycock, which the gist of which corroborated the hearing that sound from especially Detective Laycock, who was on the right side of, as he was approaching from behind of Austin Schmidt. And he was also able to corroborate what he heard and what he saw and the firing of a single round that was done. The other thing that I want to sort of draw attention to before we show you the other thing is the statement from SM, the young 15-year-old who was held by her uncle. Protocol investigators interviewed SM, who said that she had gone to Mr. Sua's house that day and that Mr. Sua is her uncle. SM said that she was on the couch in the living room. SM said that the lights were off except the kitchen light. SM said that she heard Mr. Sua moving around in the weight room. She said that then he paused near the fridge in the kitchen and reached into a fanny pack. SM said that she was nervous because Mr. Sua was drunk. SM said that Mr. Sua pulled a gun out of the fanny pack and he came and sat by her. SM said that she began shaking. SM said that Mr. Sua asked why she was nervous and then began asking her if she had sent people after him. SM said that he told her the gun was fake, but at one point he shot the gun into the couch next to her. SM said that Mr. Sua kept telling her he was going to shoot her. SM said that Mr. Sua grabbed her sleeve and made her sit between his legs. SM said that Mr. Sua grabbed her neck and told her if she moved, he would shoot her. SM said that she texted her mom and called her, and she also called her girlfriend, MV, asking for help. SM said that when she heard that her father knocking, as I indicated to you that they had responded to the Mill Creek residence, and they could not get any response from inside. So she tells us that she heard her father knocking. Mr. Sua told her if she moved, he would shoot her. SM said that when the police knocked, he did the same, because as I indicated to you earlier, they were hearing this other incident. Maybe he's in a route, and Sergeant Wilberger was trying to knock on the door to clear the house and had gone on to try the code, but they could not make entry in, but they had gotten no response. But this corroborates from SM's own word that she could hear the police outside knocking, but she could not say anything because she was told to be silent or that he would shoot her. SM said that during this time, Mr. Sua pointed the gun at her back and then at her head. SM said that she thought that the gun was a 9. SM said that Mr. Sua would put a pillow over the gun while they sat in the living room. SM said that the room was dark and only the kitchen light was on. SM said that then she saw cops. SM said that she heard them yell to drop the gun. SM said that she heard a bang and closed her eyes. SM thought that Mr. Sua had shot her. SM said that when she opened her eyes, she saw Mr. Sua bleeding from the head, and she ran to the cops. SM said that they took her outside and was taken to her mother. So when we take the statements from the officers, the statement that was critical from the shooting officer, and then matched it with the SM's statement as well. At this point, I will share with you again, for the purposes of the debrief, what we did have. So what I want to draw your attention to, Keith, so this was captured by the officers who followed behind as the shooting had transpired. Again, what I want to point is, they were holding position. So what this demonstrates is the tight quarters. This is Officer Schmidt. And this is still while they're holding position without moving anything. SM has already ran out. There's been a single shot that's been fired. So this shows us the approximate distance, the positioning, and then of course the gun still in the hand of Mr. Sua. And this starts to help us understand the layout and where the hostage was in when the shooting occurred. And when Mr. Schmidt first saw Mr. Sua and shot, he was looking around this partial wall as he came around, and he saw, and that exchange that took place, and as he indicated, at that moment, he was hiding his head behind. He heard him say, and that's when he made the decision to fire that shot at that moment. So that was important for orientation. And the second thing, again, that we were able to determine again, on the left right here, you see a screenshot from UPD Officer Deal, who entered the scene immediately following the shooting. He had his body-worn camera going. The other officers did not have it. And it depicts K9 UPD Officer Schmidt in the same position he was in when he fired the weapon. So as I showed you earlier. So as he's coming up, this again shows Officer Schmidt as he pies around the wall, Officer Laycock, who was to the right as he was moving there, and as they came back in, that allowed us to again get the orientation from the space, because we did not have a body-worn camera there. And on the right, you can see a screenshot from the body camera of the same officer. The arrow shows the wall Officer Schmidt shot around. Again, so as Deal comes in, we see the positioning because they're still frozen and holding their positions. And as Deal comes in, and as he moves, we continue to get that orientation of the officer from that scene as well. The other thing that now what we'll do is we'll show you, because again, as I said, we did not have any body-worn camera but we were able to get orientation. This was Officer Deal, who was outside. This is body-worn camera of UPD Officer Deal after hearing the shot is being fired. So go ahead and Keith, run that. Because remember, they were holding position. They didn't think that anybody was there, but they heard the shot, so now they're responding. This is the side of the house. And right there is the young woman being escorted out. So they're holding position. Wilbur, Laycock, Schmidt. So now he's going to, so that gives us the continuity.
Self-inflicted. Please fire. As a hostage now,
they don't know whether it was self-inflicted. He's getting that information. We fired. There was a hostage situation there. Again, that was the stills that we took, but that allowed us, since it happened rather quickly, the positions didn't move, so that gave us the orientation for our analysis. The other video that I'm going to ask Keith to play, as I indicated to you earlier, there were two scenes of response. This is at the West Valley location, but remember, the line is already going in. They're listening to it. Mill Creek officers are not, but the other officer who was there with the other officer, his body camera is running while the other officer is holding the phone. So go ahead and play that and turn up the volume, make sure. Get out, get out, get out. I'm going to shoot.
Family 525 on Mill Creek. I've got the open line. Suspect saying, get up, get up, get up. I'm going to shoot her.
Get out, get out, get out. I'm going to shoot her. So we hear both in real time on the phone that is being done, but it's now being captured on this, and then it's immediately reconfirmed by the officer who hears that, who's now trying to communicate this. So that was really important for us, again, because we didn't have the original body-worn camera. It allowed us to not only take the statements, then go back and reassess and, excuse me, put them all in their right sequence and to corroborate all the information, excuse me, that we had. Go to the next one, please. So these are the still shots again of the couch, and when they pulled the body, as I indicated, we had the still shot with the hand with the gun already, but then this is a close-up of the gun, the phone that was there, the other phone, as well as the handgun that was recovered from the scene as well from this matter. So at this point, so I just want to take a second to say that finally, so let me just go ahead and take a moment to highlight a couple of things that are really important. First of all, I want to acknowledge SM's composure and incredible courage in a very difficult situation where she had the foresight to be able to reach out quietly with that phone and also to communicate with her parents. I can't imagine the terror and trauma that she was going through while this event was folding through. She, as her statements, of course, indicated how frightened she was, but the fact that she was able to quietly get the phone going and call and alert people and just hold her space there speaks incredible volumes for her composure and courage. The second thing I want to note here is the professionalism of Sergeant Wilbur in this scenario. As I indicated to you, objectively speaking, I had two scenes, and the information that was being shared with Sergeant Wilbur, for all intents and purposes, that maybe the suspect had moved on with the hostage somewhere else. And they had responded, and they were now going to be moving into a different line of inquiry. But Sergeant Wilbur, through his interview and at that moment of incident command, had the foresight to say, okay, we're here, but you know, there was a call that went out, there's a young woman who's involved in it, there's a gun involved, but while we're here, I want to make sure we clear this house, because they were still trying to get that information that was going through that process. And I think that is really important to acknowledge the professionalism of that. You know, it reminds me, I was sharing with a colleague, it reminds me, when I was in college and high school, we had playing football, and the coach used to talk about that when a play happens, there's a tendency to collapse everybody there, but each person has their assignments, and you need to keep your assignments and execute on your assignments, because you never know when your assignment is going to be critical in helping solve that play. And in this situation, again, I just want to underscore the professionalism of Sergeant Wilbur, because if they had left that scene, we would have had maybe a worse tragic scenario than the tragedy that we're dealing with here. The third thing that I want to highlight is Officer Smith's discipline to do his job. He was a canine officer. He wasn't the principal who was arriving there because he was going to be doing. He's a canine officer who's there with Sergeant Wilbur in a supportive capacity. Sergeant Wilbur wants to now clear the place. They go back in there, and in fact, I think it's because Sergeant Smith's smaller than everybody else. He crawls through through that window, and as he says, he announces that, hey, UPD, he's there. He's a canine officer. but he's now assisting in the clearing, and he doesn't get a response, and he comes around. And I just want to acknowledge his discipline to do his job and save a life, and the courage to act and to trust his skill in a very dynamic and incredibly tense situation. He comes around, he perceives, he sees what's happening, he's on the point. That's not the position necessarily he wanted to be in. And at that point, his debriefing with us is so important, because it gives us not only what he's seeing, but what he's acting. And he says at that point, he's close, I see her, she's between his legs, he's got his arm around her, and he's pushing that gun into her temple, and he reaches the conclusion that he has to act at that moment. And I can tell you, I'm not a law enforcement officer. They're taught to shoot at center mass, except in these hostage situations where they train, and they know that at that point they have to take a headshot. And the fact that he, in that dynamic situation, had both the composure, the discipline, and the skill, and the difficult decision that he had to make at that time is incredible. And I also want to just share with you that this is a terrible scenario. This morning I've got a person who is, a life is lost and a life is saved, and I met with a family who are both the mother and brother and sister of the person who is shot, but they're also the grandmother and the mother of the victim whose life is saved. And it's about as difficult of a scenario and situation as you can be in. And again, I just want to say this was not a very easy scenario to be in. And I just want to underscore that it was Officer Schmidt and his professionalism and training that saved a life that day. And we can all appreciate that he was there in that very difficult situation. And I don't use the